Welcome back to the PolicyViz podcast. I'm your host, John Schwabish. On this week's episode of the show, I am excited to have Tristan Guillevin, that's my worst French accent, by the way, join me on this episode of the show. Tristan is now a freelance data visualization designer, consultant, and he does a lot of his work in Tableau, and he's created some amazing Tableau add-ons, you might call them. He has a free open source site where you can go drop your data in and it will create Tableau templates for some more bespoke data visualizations like B-swarm charts, core diagrams, Sankey diagrams, those sorts of charts that can be more difficult for us to create on our own. And he's created this great tool where you can just drop in your data, download a Tableau file, open it up, and you're on your way. So I wanted to talk to Tristan about his work, about his journey to becoming a freelancer, and what he has planned in store for this tool that he's created and open it up to the community. So we're going to get right to it. Here's this week's episode of the podcast with Tristan Guillevin. Hi, Tristan. Welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Hello, good to see you too.
I'm really glad we got to finally do this. I've been rescheduling on you like a million times, but I finally got you.
But yeah.
And
I know scheduling can be difficult. No
yeah, it can be hard, but we got it. And I caught you now, so you're in Mexico for a little bit.
I am in Mexico for a while.
Okay,
yes.
Great. So for folks who don't know, Tristan has this new fantastic, does lots of great work in general. But the reason that I wanted to chat specifically because you have these new, I would say several tools. They're all within the same sort of ecosystem, but several tools that help people create different, more advanced, more bespoke visualizations in Tableau with like just a couple of clicks, which is pretty amazing. I want to get there in a little bit, but I want to start by talking about your personal journey over the last few years, because like right towards the beginning of the pandemic, right, you like started your own company, became a freelancer, moved countries, like didn't just move down the block. So you started this whole thing. So yeah, so I'm just curious, like, what were you doing? What are you doing now? And what was that transition and change like for you?
Yes. Okay. So I think the best to answer that is to really start, let's say, from the beginning.
Okay.
Like when I finished like school, I was always wanted to be kind of independent
Right.
in some way. It's something no one in my family has done. My family are like pure worker, like
Yep.
in the factory,
Yep.
and they don't know anything about starting a business or something, and me neither.
Mm-hmm.
But I just like the fact of being independent,
Mm-hmm.
right? To not necessarily have a boss and to have the freedom of working with who you want, where you want. So if right now I can be in Mexico, is exactly that, right?
Right.
It's the freedom to choose. But yeah, I had no idea how to start that, and I also had no experience. So I started working in a consulting company for 2.5 years, just working with different clients, learning Tableau, getting better at data visualization with Tableau. Then for 2.5 years, I worked with like a startup in France, so smaller team, but this time not as a consultant, really part
Part
of
of the team.
a team working on a product. That's where I learned mostly the coding aspect, GitHub, working in a project with multiple people, with not just like a consulting that goes from client to client,
Yeah.
right? And then COVID happened. So that was like 5 years after I started. COVID happened, and it was a bit of that weird timing because I was also kind of finishing my project with that startup.
Mm-hmm.
What we planned to build, what we wanted to build was built, was done, was almost finished, and we were like wondering, okay, what to do next. And since there was also COVID, no one knew really what to do, how it was going to change, and the impact. So I asked my company, and I have to thank them to allow me to do that, is I said, well, I would like to start being kind of independent freelance. Would you allow me to start working part-time? So part-time freelance.
Yeah.
And they say, yeah, okay. For us is even good because we actually don't really know what to do right now. So you will work 3 days with us and 2 days as a freelance. And I started to do that for 7 months. And after 7 months, I choose definitely that path. And yeah, there was not necessarily something next really interesting for me to do. And actually, the entire team that I was working with in that startup, they also all left. So
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of the end, and it was a good transition.
Yeah, that's
I have
great.
to say, it's also um, it was also a time where companies started to accept fully remote
Yeah.
working. So the place that I was living was not necessarily being that important compared to 1 or 2 years before.
Right.
So I could work with clients in different part of France or in different part of the world while being in France.
Right.
And yeah, that's how it started. So it was not like I quit everything
Yeah.
from one day to the other to go that way. It was like a bit of the lucky to be at the right. It was aligning,
Yeah.
right? It was
Yeah.
my work let me do it,
Right.
and it
Yeah.
was a good moment to start.
Yeah. It's
Yes.
great that they let you sort of downshift a little bit for them and everybody, and it all seemed to work out. So now we're sort of where like the end of 2020 or so, and you're
Yes.
you're
Yeah, yeah.
full time freelancing, but you're living in France. So then
Exactly.
you said, I'm going to try a different country.
It's always something I wanted.
Yeah,
Always something I wanted. I moved to the Netherlands mostly for like personal
yeah,
reason, not because like I really wanted, but it was a first step into a new country.
right.
But yeah, right now we are also figure out which country will be next, because we are not necessarily
Right.
I will not say not attached, because we like the Netherlands,
Yeah.
but it's like also wanted like having that will to see something else,
Yeah.
and not necessarily as digital nomad that don't live in a place but just go from. I don't necessarily like that aspect,
Yeah.
but more like um, let's see in which place we really feel like living.
Right. Right.
Or and those things can change through your life, right?
Yeah.
Maybe at some point in your life you like something, and 10 years later you like something else.
100%. Yeah.
and and I like the freedom to be able to do this,
Yeah.
more
So
or
so
less.
tell us as much as you can about the freelancing work that you're doing. Like who, I mean, you don't have to obviously reveal names or specifics, but like
No, no, no
what,
problem.
yeah, what is the kind of work that you're doing, and maybe even more to the point, like what is the work that really gets you excited? I'm sure just like working in an office, there's some of the freelance work that you're kind of like, okay, and some of the stuff really like gets you excited. So what, now that you're sort of in it, you've been doing it now for what, about 2 years, two and a
For
half years?
years.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
what are the different sorts of projects that you're working on?
So I first is more like what I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is easier, and
Yeah.
it's on my website. I don't have a full time client. I don't want to spend 5 days a week for a client, because I think that is just going kind of
Yeah. Going
back
back. Yeah.
as being an employee to in a
Sure.
place. If so, I have currently two main clients, and I'm just helping them with Tableau stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's like they want new dashboards. They have problematics of performance, of they don't know how to do certain things. So I'm helping those two clients to be better
Yeah.
at Tableau, develop dashboard, and yeah, just and that is kind of like I don't know if you have that saying in English, that red thread. So it's like those two clients that have been working for the past 2 years, and we have this relation of we trust
Yeah.
each other, and I don't have a specific amount of day, and not neither a specific days in the week.
Right.
They just ask me to do things, I do them, and then we have this
This
ongoing
ongoing
thing
relationship.
together.
Yeah.
So these are my my stable income, if you
Mm-hmm.
want. Um, and then apart from that, from time to time, I have like new people reaching out and be like, I would like you to help you redesign our dashboards,
Mm-hmm.
because we have some things and we don't necessarily like how it looks, and we have seen what you have been doing on Tableau Public. We would like you to help us design. And that could be like really short project of 2 3 days,
Mm-hmm.
just pure design.
Yeah.
And then after that, maybe I don't hear from them for 6 months, and after
Yeah.
6 months they will be like, hey, we have a new
A new
one
one.
that we would like your input.
Right.
So it's really free. I really try my best currently to not work full time for client
Hmm.
to have the time to build the things I'm building, right?
Right.
Because and I think this has always been my kind of plan when I started. Is like I have a 3 years plan. So the first year when I started, it was really about um, working as much as possible to have kind of emergency fund within my company, right?
Hmm.
To be able to then do something. So the first year was really working a lot. The second year was more about learning new things because I like to learn new things, and if I am able to create the tool that I'm doing, if I want to stay relevant, I want to learn.
Yep.
So I spend a good amount of time learning Webflow to create website, Figma for more the design aspect, and Svelte
Hmm.
for the coding aspect. So before I was just the Tableau guy, and now I can really be like, okay, I can have this kind of complete vision of like Tableau is for BI, let's say, um, for company. Webflow is to make my website. Figma is to do my design,
Hmm.
and Svelte is and D3 Svelte and all that web thing is because I also create things on the web.
Right.
So that was my second year, spending a lot of time learning those things and not necessarily doing anything with that, just learning.
Just learning. Yeah.
And now that third year, I'm really focused on sharing.
Hmm.
So sharing what I've learned and sharing, creating tools and habit, and really use what I learned to create things.
Right. So
So that's why I created those tools, and I have other things I want to create. Also, make probably an online courses by the end of the year
yeah.
to also teach,
Teach.
teach, give back,
Right.
right? Teach,
Right.
yes.
So that's great. So that's a great segue to the next part, which is this your site generally, and particularly this tool that you've been building out, which I
Mm-hmm.
believe at the moment has 6 different, I guess, templates, maybe
Type
we
of
call them
chart.
templates, tools
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
build different types of visualizations. So network diagrams, Sankey diagrams, bump charts, beastworm charts, Voronoi tree maps, which I should say, if I recall correctly, right, the Voronoi tree map one that you have is like multiple different shapes. It's not just like in a square or in a circle. It's like you can sort of,
You can choose. Yeah.
yeah. And then a chord diagram. So these are amazing. And I know that there's lots of ways that people try to build these in Tableau natively, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll just say so. Well, actually, I was going to say how I use it, but why don't I just let you describe how people can use them? And then I want to learn more about like what's going on under the hood a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So they started to exist because I was mostly um, it's a mixed feeling of being lazy and annoyed at the way it had to be done before.
Yeah.
So before is like you had to take your own data and like make it some joins and
Yeah.
create a lot of calculation, create table calculation, and basically all the tutorials were like really long and okay, now you need to create this calculated
Yeah.
field, write this one,
Yeah.
and it was just like a really long process. And before before doing that tool, I never did a Sankey. I never
Mm-hmm.
did anything in Tableau because I didn't want it to go through all of
All those
that.
steps. Right. Exactly.
And like I said last year, I spent a good amount of time learning new things,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, wow, it's really so easy, or much easier
Mm-hmm.
to do a Sankey in D3 with observable or anything
Right.
than doing it in Tableau, right?
Yeah.
And then I think that's what I like when you learn different things. And I made a talk in at a year ago at Elevate. It's on my YouTube channel
Mm-hmm.
about how being constantly a beginner and having that beginner mindset opens connection, or like create connection in your brain, I would say, to be like, oh, okay, I know how to do this, and I know how to do that is completely different. But maybe there is a path that could connect those two things to create something new.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happens. So because I was able to create like a Voronoi tree map or a Sankey or a network diagram with D3 and Svelte,
Mm-hmm.
I was also like, well, maybe there is a way to convert the SVG,
Mm-hmm.
like an SVG, into a polygon. And
Mm-hmm.
there are libraries that does just that.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, do you gave them you give the library a SVG path,
Mm-hmm.
and it converts it into a polygon, so a set of dots that are connected, right?
Right.
A set of coordinates that you can connect. Tableau cannot read SVG. Tableau doesn't know what a SVG is, but Tableau is really good at making
Right.
polygons. So as long as you have like an X and a Y and a path,
Mm-hmm.
you can create polygons. So I was like, what if I use, so when you use my tool, what you see is pure SVG generated with these three Svelte.
Mm-hmm.
And when you click on, I want that visualization in Tableau, the tool will convert the SVGs into polygons,
Mm-hmm.
put that in a data source, and packaged it with a Tableau workbook.
Mm.
And then when you open the Tableau workbook, you have that template that you never really see. Is just like
Right.
a template connected to the data source that you just generated visually.
Right.
Okay. So how, like I think I started by explaining how it works before saying how to use it.
No, but
So
but
to use
that's
it is really
yeah, but
Mhm.
that's really interesting. I do want to get to how people can use it, but
Yes,
before so I feed my data in, and we'll get to that in a second. It generates the polygons, and then
yes,
how does it get to that part to Tableau so that when I download from your site, I download a Tableau workbook. So have you built
yes,
sort of like a Tableau template that it feeds in automatically because the data is always going to be in that same structure?
exactly.
Yeah.
So for each of the visualization, there is a Tableau template, a
Mm-hmm.
file that is connected to some dummy data,
Yeah.
but that dummy data has the exact same structure
Right.
because I am in control of the structure,
Gotcha.
right, of
Right.
the data source. And then when you click on download, it does a few things because also Tableau is a Tableau file is just an XML file.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can parse the XML and change a few things. So for example, my Tableau template have a fixed size of 1400 by 1000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But when you use the tool, you can configure the width and the height of
Yeah.
the export.
Right.
And then I'm just going through the XML and replacing that 1400 by
By whatever
your
I put
width
in.
and the 1000 by what your height. So it just changed a little bit of things in the XML file.
Mm-hmm.
And then the template is always connected to a data source that is called network.csv
Mm-hmm.
or cord.csv or sankey.csv, and I'm just replacing that dummy file
With the new
by
file.
the one you just by
Right.
the one generated by the tool, and I packaged it and I put it
Gotcha.
in your download folder.
So I upload a CSV. Essentially, it converts it to an SVG, then to XML, into Tableau, and at the same time, that XML and the CSV is what I end up pulling down as the user.
Um,
Kind of.
the only difference is kind of,
Yeah.
yes. The main thing is like your initial CSV
Mm-hmm.
that you input will not
Right. That doesn't come
be
back. Right.
imported.
Right. Right.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just reading that the tool is, and actually that's I think something really important to say is like the tool is not keeping any of the file. It's just like it's just read it
Right.
and use. So if you refresh the page, it's lost, right? The file is not stored anywhere, and so it's just reading through the file, generating some coordinates or just some polygons, and then when you download, you actually download those polygons information
Mm-hmm.
that you can then use to make your visualization.
Right. Right. Okay.
And
Yeah.
so
Go ahead.
yes, if I so the main difference between what was before, and that's why I felt the need of creating this is it's not it's not a template in the sense of you are not following a tutorial. It's really you input your file, you drag and drop a few things, and you click and you have it.
Yeah.
So it's in that sense it's easier. It's also I know there is some extension in in Tableau that you can download that allow you to create those things
Yeah.
or diagram network Sankey, but the result will be D3 visualization. So SVGs, it will not be native Tableau. And what I create is pure native Tableau using maps
Yep.
layers. But the biggest disadvantage of my tool as it is right now, and it's something I know and I'm aware and I need to find a solution for that is it's no longer connected to your data.
Hmm.
So if you create like a network and you have suddenly a new nodes appearing, or if you make a song key and your values change,
Right.
you need to
Redo it.
regenerate the new coordinates, go through the tool again.
Right.
So I would say currently is really good for people who want to do Tableau public visualization,
Hmm.
because it's like a one shot. You have your data, you publish it, and it's done.
Right.
So there is no refresh. Or I also know some journalists have been using it to create some network or some piece, because also once it's printed or when it's
It's
done,
done.
right?
Right.
Currently it's not usable in a business scenario where your data will change,
Right.
because you will have to go through the tool
Every
every day
day.
to
Right.
regenerate the new thing.
Right.
So that is not currently, um, but I guess eventually I will
Figure that
find a
out.
way. Or also I think is one part that I won't mind working with someone who has an idea how to do that,
Yeah.
right? To be like, hey, I would like to help you on. I'm not looking for any employee. I
Hmm.
think I'm not at that stage, anywhere that stage right now.
Yeah.
But to have a work with another freelance or someone who has an idea, I'm completely okay to take that part.
Right.
To tackle that part
Yeah.
here, because it's really it's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
No,
difficult.
absolutely. But to this point, because we were talking about this before we started chatting for the show, it is worth noting that if I wanted to create several B swarm charts and I wanted to have them linked in terms of the um, action, you know, I have two B swarms and I click on a dot and the dot highlights on the other B swarm chart. That I could
Mhm.
do in your using your tool.
Yes.
Right.
So you can do this. um, for example, also on my Tableau public I have examples. I have actually one that I think does exactly something like that,
Hmm.
about Latin music artist. When you click on an artist, it will highlight in all parts of the dashboard, so not only on the network but also on the line chart, on the bar chart, and everywhere.
Right.
So you can link multiple highlights action, even if the data are on different data source
Right.
and I'm using parameter action.
Right.
So when you click on anything, you will put the value of what you click. So in my case, the name of the artist, I put that in a parameter.
Hmm.
And in all the other worksheet, I have a small calculation. Say if the name of the artist is equal to that parameter value, then uh, then it's true, right?
Right.
And then you can color when
Right.
it's true and then color when it's
Right.
false. And then for the user, it's really like, oh, it's when you click something, it highlights everywhere.
Right.
So if you have a B swarm, you will have three different data source, one for each B swarm that you generate. But then when you click on one, you can use the same thing, that you put the value in a parameter
Right.
and then you highlight everywhere.
So it's not connected to the raw data, but it is connected kind of enough that you can build I mean, I don't even know what the right framing in here is, but you couldn't build a comprehensive dashboard, even though you couldn't use real time data or updating data. But I think it's important for
Yes.
people to know that um, you can still use the tool and link it to other visualizations in your dashboard simply by kind of importing one workbook into another workbook and then using parameters to sort of link that together. So I think that's important to know. But I want to get back, because we sped ahead, but I want to get back to asking you to describe how people use it, because there's a lot of options that you can play around with, like on your site in the browser itself before you render
Mhm.
the Tableau workbook.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it's like I think I'm at this stage that building the tool is really, I don't know how to say, fun,
Yeah.
in the sense that also Svelte is really fun to use.
Yeah.
Like I really rediscover my that I like to code with Svelte. And so if someone has a bug or someone has a request, someone would like to add something new,
Hmm.
it's really easy to add that, right? And I remember for the beast one, before you could only have like an X value,
Hmm.
and now you can have X and Y. Like those kind of requests, I can easily change and break things,
Right.
but and also come with solution. So it's all the tools are a bit like that. So you upload your file, can be CSV, can be Excel file. Sometimes it needs to be a JSON in the case of the network. And then you have a certain amount of, depending on the chart, you have a certain amount of um, parameter that you can change. So, for example, in a network, you can change the different force that you will apply.
Mm-hmm.
In the B swarm, you can change the size of the bubble. In the Sankey, you can change the padding. I just released the core diagram, and you can also change the spacing, the size of the arcs. You can change a good amount of
Yeah.
things. And then when you export the result in Tableau, and I think that's what makes the difference, and that's what people, I see a lot of people using it and creating things on Tableau Public, is because I started because I wanted to create those things, right? I
Right.
started because I wanted to make me being able to do network or Sankey more easily.
Yeah.
So I also noticed that if I just gave the coordinates of the polygons, I could have the visual, but it was kind of ending there, right?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, how do I customize? How do I personalize it? So I was really trying to put as much information in the export for you to be able to go beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, if you create a network diagram, the export could be just the position of the circles and the lines,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe the size of your circle,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
But if in your JSON you have other attributes, like for example, I made one, like this is the first one that I have in mind, about Marvel movies.
Mm-hmm.
Then in my JSON file, I also added the phase. So Marvel movies are released in phases. So phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four. And I if the information of the phase is in the data, then when you export the result in my tool, you will also find back that phase
Right.
information for you to use it in colors.
Yeah.
So if you create a B swarm, for example, yes, I am going to give you the coordinates of the points, but I'm also going to give you as many data that I can to help you maybe relink that
Mm-hmm.
to another CSV where you have more information. So you can then make a join
Right.
between the file that I'm giving you and your own data
Yeah.
to add more information, because maybe you need much more information. So I'm not just exporting the position. I'm exporting
As much as you
whatever I
can.
can,
Right.
whatever the tool can have in the
Yeah.
extract, and I'm giving you that. So
Yeah.
yeah, just
No, it's great.
in the core diagram, for example, I think it's always difficult to put colors in a
Yeah.
core diagram. I never really know if it's like, how do you, there is so many ways to make a color core diagram. So I'm giving you what is the name of the source, what is the name of the target, and the value of the source, the value of the target. So you can also then make your own calculation saying, well, if the value of source is higher than the value of the target, then I will use the color of source, right? To
Right.
see, so each chord will have the color of the one that
That's
is
going to.
superior to the other.
Yeah.
Or you can choose to do the opposite. So
Right.
it's really about giving the flexibility to the users to create those things,
Right.
and not yeah.
And then, like you said, you could try to
Trying to
join your original data or another data set back onto that.
exactly.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I also want to note, like for listeners, because I was using it to make a B swarm chart, and I wanted to do something kind of specific, and then I just like DM'd you, and you're like, oh yeah, hold on, and like 2 minutes later, you're like, okay, that's fixed, and like there was this like new capability. So like it is a really interesting project that I think is giving a lot to the community. I was going to say Tableau community, but I think it's beyond that,
Mhm.
because you don't really have to be well. You don't really have to be a sophisticated Tableau user, because you can just download it up and double click.
Mhm.
But really, you can do a lot in the tool itself, like in the
Yes.
browser.
Yes. Yeah. That's why someone asked me to add the SVG export.
Mm-hmm.
So and I'm not like I'm not flourish, or I'm not
Yeah, right.
those people who really allow you to like I'm just by myself.
Yeah.
But if you want, you can create a core diagram and export the result in SVG
Right.
of what you see, and then use Illustrator to finish your work or anything.
Right.
You can also just export the CSV,
Mm-hmm.
just the data
Mm-hmm.
generated, and then probably I am not a Power BI expert, but you could also use that CSV as a source in Power BI to, and I don't know if Power BI allows you to create polygons,
Mm-hmm.
but why not? Like,
Right.
or any like in the end, you will just have like coordinates, right?
Right.
You will have like coordinates of polygons. So if you want to input that in any other tool that you want, please
Yeah,
do.
it should work.
My expertise was always Tableau,
Tableau.
and I
Right.
have always I started with Tableau. So for me was it started as how can I make those visuals more easy to build in Tableau.
Mm-hmm.
But then yeah, I was like, well, if I can generate coordinates, then probably you can just
Right.
put them anywhere you
Should work
want.
anywhere.
Yeah.
What do you have plans for more?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Um, I think I try to release two type of charts every month.
Mm.
So now we are beginning of March. I just released today the core diagram,
Mm-hmm.
and I think the next one will be stream graph.
Mm-hmm.
Stream graph,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I already started, and I think also it's like a nice visualization that is not
Yeah.
by default.
Yeah.
It's not in Tableau, so yeah, why not?
That,
And sometimes it's just people reach out to me and be like, "Hey, I would like this and
yeah.
that," and I evaluate. So, for example, one was about gauge chart.
Yeah.
Is it
Gauge
the
chart. Yeah. Yeah.
pronunciation?
Yeah.
Gauge chart, yes. And I see why,
Mm-hmm.
because it's difficult to make them
Yeah.
in Tableau. There are like a lot of tutorials about how to make them in Tableau. But also is I feel that this is something that needs to be connected to your data,
Mm.
right? It is really you want your gauge to
Yeah.
update
The
to show
update.
you. And if you have to go through a tool to generate it every time, it's like maybe one day if I manage to do
Yeah.
the
That last step.
refresh,
Right.
yes.
Right.
But currently, so yeah, I'm just and so currently is I'm focusing on making visual tools for Tableau,
Mm-hmm.
but I also have a big idea that I would like to experiment this month or next month. That has nothing to do with visual,
Mm-hmm.
but also since I already have something that can manipulate the XML of a Tableau file and then giving you back, I'm trying to think about a new like ways to automate things that are really annoying to do in Tableau
Mm.
through a tool that will make it easier for you.
Right.
So basically, what I'm doing, I'm building those tools because I want them for
For
myself
yourself.
and I
Right.
don't
Yeah.
exist, right? When I work with clients, I am always I want to save time in
yeah.
like that. That's the most important thing. Is like I want to do be able to create things faster. So everything that is really fastidious, long, and that doesn't bring anything is just a lot of clicks.
Mm-hmm.
I am trying to think of ways that I can make that annoying part faster.
Yeah. Absolutely. Um,
So
so you've got a
mhm.
lot of great stuff, building it out. So before we wrap up, how can people find you, and how can they uh, keep up to date on what you are releasing, so that they know, like, when that stream graph comes out, that they're like itching to be able to make, like, I'm sure there's someone listening to
Mhm.
this is like, I want to make that stream graph. So how can they like make sure that they find out about that?
So it's quite easy. I have spent a good amount of time making it seamless. Is La Data Viz. So La Data Viz. I am La Data Viz anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
On YouTube, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, everywhere you can find me is La Data Viz. So depending on your favorite social media or whatever is La Data Viz. If you want to keep up to date, like on a daily basis, is mostly Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just sharing as often as I can on Twitter the new things. And if that's not your thing, and I completely understand, it's I have a newsletter that I send at the end of each month
Mm-hmm.
that that just is a big recap of all the things that I've done during the months.
Great.
So I'm not selling anything in those newsletter or anything. Is basically like, okay, all the new features in the tools of March
Mm-hmm.
are, and I just kind of list them, and I so that is those are the two things. And the third pillar of my communication is YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
uh, will be more and more YouTube. So I started currently to do just the tutorials of how to use my tool in YouTube, but I also plan to do much more than just tutorials,
Yeah.
like really discussing about data visualization, good practices, maybe also like some introduction to Svelte
Mm-hmm.
and D3,
Yeah.
because my community is most the people who are following me are mostly Tableau people,
Mm-hmm.
and I know a lot of them are afraid of coding or like be having this image of like, no, D3 is like that super complicated thing and on the web.
Right.
But I really think that the new approach with Svelte and D3
Mm-hmm.
simplify a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do the chain D3, enter, append, join,
Mm-hmm.
those things. You can, I think the experience of making visuals on the web in 2023 right now is much better than it was
Yeah.
5 years ago,
Right.
or easier, more enjoyable. So I also want to share those kind of
That's
things
great.
to show people that it's not
Yeah. That's
that
terrific.
difficult.
Yeah. Providing those skills and the learning the tools for folks is fantastic. So I'll be the first to say thank you if no one else has, but I'm sure many have already reached out. So
Thank you.
thanks for
Yes.
making this. Um, Tristan, thanks so much for coming on the show. Thanks for making these open tools, and I'll look forward to the next set. So thanks a lot for coming on.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And yeah, I hope people will. I don't know. I don't know. I know you have been using Tableau more and more.
Yep.
So
Yep.
maybe you will see you some Tableau public visualization using my
Yeah,
tool.
for
And
sure. For sure.
if your community, if your listeners are who are not necessarily Tableau user, can now see and try those tools, and maybe discover that actually you can do for free also, because you have
Right.
Tableau public. So for free you can create Sankey, Voronoi,
Yeah.
AB Swarm, network, and more.
Yeah.
So
Terrific. All right. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thanks everyone for tuning into this week's episode of the show. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you will check out Tristan's tool. I do have a big favor to ask. If you are listening to the show on iTunes or on Spotify, please consider leaving a review and a rating of the show on the podcast provider. The more people that get to know about the show, the more likely it is I can get bigger and better guests to join me on the show, so that you can learn more about data visualization, about presentation skills, and all those other things that you know that you can learn about here on the PolicyViz podcast. If you're on YouTube and watching these episodes, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, or just leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you think about the show. So, thanks again for listening to the episode of the show. Until next time, this has been the PolicyViz podcast. Thanks so much for listening.